Hi folks, and welcome to week 9 of Farm Tech Talk, the Livestock Show. I'm joined by Adam Woods, our beef and suckler editor, and Darren Carty, our sheep and schemes editor. Shortly, I'll be joined by Aidan Brennan, our dairy editor, but first I'm going to tackle some of the livestock issues on the sheep and suckler side with Darren and Adam. So, folks, another good week in the fields. If this COVID-19 has an impact on weather, it's definitely having a positive impact on weather, because it has been super probably since we started recording Farm Tech Talk. Darren, to jump to you first, you're busy in Tullamore Farm. You have a number of issues, I suppose, that we can discuss. The first one is you're weighing lambs at this stage. You're not near drafting lambs yet in Tullamore Farm.
Yeah, so I suppose, Jack, the 40-day waits is to really complete a picture and to tie into performance recording with Sheep Ireland. So this year we have, say, taken a lot of extra data than what we had in other years. So yours were single sire mated. So each ram was let off with a defined batch of ewes. Dim tag numbers were taken. When ewes lamb down, there was a weight record taken on lambs. There was records such as how good the ewe was to, say, mothering ability, how much milk she had, how vigorous the lambs were. And that was really, I suppose, maybe to follow through and to over time develop and be able to identify which are the best performing ewes in the flock. But from a Sheep Ireland point of view, they want to get information on the rams. And in particular, they want to back up, say, the Eurostar evaluations. It's essentially to ask the question is, are these rams doing what they say in the tin? So the Eurostar evaluations are saying they're going to deliver X predicted kilos of carcass weight, or that they're going to finish in so many days. And it's just to try and see that. And the 40-day wait, I suppose, is the best balance of knowing, say, what I suppose maybe what input the ewe has in terms of milk yield in driving that lamb to that 40 days, because after that your environmental conditions will have, say, I suppose maybe a bigger input in this, how good your grass management is, whether they're getting creep fed or that sort of aspect. So they have, I suppose, maybe the average 40 day as the best weight possible.
Okay, so that's interesting. We'll obviously come back to the results of that when you kind of distill the data and see what the differences are between the different rams, and that'll be interesting to see. You're also, I suppose, at the same time when the ewes and lambs are in the yard, you're giving them the first dose, are you?
Yeah, so Sean has actually a fairly busy program completed there, say, on Wednesday. So we're giving the first dose for nematovirus, and he would have said that he would have been looking at the lambs, and we're probably a bit unique in Tullamore in this. Other farmers might have said, Jeannie, you're late given the first dose, but we have to remember that up to 2 years ago, there was no sheep on this farm, so it was relatively clean. So nematovirus hasn't been as big as a risk as on other farms that would normally, once lambs hit 6 weeks, they'd have to be in it with a dose, or they'd have lambs doing a lot of scouring. Now, he said that he's only starting to see some lambs scouring. So it's I suppose maybe a right time to get on top of it and to give lambs a clean bill of health. From now on, we'll start doing fecal egg count tests, and that will, I suppose, dictate the need to dose. We're probably going to see that if weather stays fine, you won't probably see a lot of worm activity. That was particularly the case 2 years ago, and what he seen was that when weather turned and there was rain, that we seen a big flush of worms. So that'll be something that he'll keep on, I suppose, maybe a good, say, a good lid on, just to see that we're keeping up to date in that way. The warmer that he used was just a white drench, and I suppose the reason for that is that that's the recommendation to stop any antibiotic resistance developing, to use in other warmers that you don't need to.
Okay, Darren, are you doing anything on lameness? Like, I mean, it's a terror to see kind of young lambs, maybe only 5-6 weeks old, and they're already lame. I mean, will you do anything, or have you any kind of lame lambs like that now in Tullamore Farm?
Yeah, we're after seeing it, Jack, in the last few days, and it's probably the most calls I've gotten the last week, and it's really, I suppose, maybe a combination of the hard ground, but more so, say, the rise in dry matter in grass. And in particular, where ewes have grazed down maybe stimmy sort of paddocks or swards, because like the bacteria that cause scald is in feces, it's in soil, it's in all fields. But established, it needs to have a small bit of damage between the two hoof claws, and even something as simple as stimmy grass can damage that hard ground. Uh, and that's something we've seen a lot of this week. So Sean is going to run them through a footbath. He's been using zinc sulfate there at 10%. But look at the other two common ones, I suppose, is a lot of people using copper sulfate at the moment, but say we have a new race down there and that will corrode the galvanizing on that, and also formalin. And like the one thing I'd say always when I mention formalin is to people is look, just be careful because it is very strong. It is has some carcinogenic effects. So you want to be outside. You want to have a mask, gloves, all the I suppose maybe personal protective clothing. It can do a good job, but maybe not to make it up just as strong in the first treatment for young lambs because it can be rather hard on the hoof, and it can be maybe severe enough on young lambs.
Okay, are you doing any preventative stuff? Any vaccines going in at this stage?
Yeah, so we've gone with the first Clostridial disease vaccine, and that's I suppose maybe an interesting one. In this other years, we've looked at the idea of maybe trying to draw it out a bit longer and trying to get, say, maybe more cover from the O. So, like the O's are on a Clostridial disease vaccination program, and our lambs are approaching 7, 8 weeks of age. Some people would say you could probably drag that out to 9 or 10 weeks before you come in with the vaccine. But look at it, it's I suppose it's a one-man farm or as close as possible to one man. And when he has sheep in, he's trying to get as many jobs done. The other job that he's doing or that has done on Wednesday is he put click on the lambs. Now there's I suppose maybe two elements for that. One is this the lighter lambs you put it on, you'll need a lower dose rate. But that's not really I suppose maybe the main one concerning it is look at click is the best product on the market in terms of the withdrawal or the linted protection you have in that you've up to 16 weeks. The killer with click is that it's a 40-day withdrawal. So Sean wants to put it on now because he thinks that in, I say, 40 days time, he will have lambs to go from that first draft. So he just wants to get it to balance as best as possible, getting the maximum time frame of cover with also being able to kill lambs or not being restrictive for drafting and getting them away early.
Okay, so the first lambs are from Tullamore Farm. It'll kind of there's at least another 5 or 6 weeks away from drafting, says you, and then they're kind of hitting the kind of 40 kilo live weight mark at that stage. Like, is that the plan?
Yeah, so the first lambs we would have drafted there last year would have been around that sort of 40, 42 kilos in the first draft, and we got quite a good kill on them. So we did. Conditions were perfect last year. I suppose we have a lot of new swards down there, relatively new swards. So lambs are performing well. And Sean even said that at the moment. He said that there may be when he's gone through a couple of lambs that he didn't treat just because he was afraid that they would be at that sort of maybe drafting weight a bit sooner. And there was, say, some strong lambs, some strong singles that he just maybe missed over. And that was the beauty of having a weight on them as well, is he could maybe tell on where they were and where they were likely to be doing. The lambs down there, we have to go through a lot of the data, so we have to see exactly how they're doing. But like there's some lambs doing upwards of 300 grams, so they won't be long coming in the next few weeks. A question that has come in, Jack, and it's probably no harm maybe to just touch on it now, is a lot of people are asking, are we creep feeding down there? We're not creeping, say, the two strongest batches of lambs that were born, but we are creeping lambs from the yearling hoggets, and there's a batch of about maybe 18 to 20 ewes just for one reason or another, maybe problems with low milk yield or an older ewe or lamb slower to come or ones that were fostered on. They're running with the yearling hoggets and they're being creep fed, eating a small volume of meal at the moment. Sean said the lambs from the ewe lambs have got into it well, but it's just to try and take the pressure off the yearling hogget and to keep performance going as good as possible.
Growth rate. Darren, we've held you up long enough. Finish up maybe in terms of markets, in terms of the factory and the March job, kind of what happened in the last week. Like, I mean, it's still over €6 a kilo, I presume.
Yeah, it's really been a case of I suppose a lot of fluctuation over the last few weeks, and say on a Thursday morning, you could look at the quotes and you could think, Ginny, they're trying to pull them 10 cent. And then by Monday morning, they might be back up that 10 cent. And that's exactly what's happened is that last week there was a bit of pressure on price and some factories had pulled the 10 cent. We have a full complement of factories quoting again, and that there were some last week only handling small numbers. All quoting upwards of a base of €6 in Kildare and 6.10. And in general, Jack, the prices are, if you're going in with a small number of lambs, you're looking probably 6.10 to 6.15. And if you're a regular supplier or handling a large batch, factories are keen to tie you in at the moment, and their prices are going from 6.20 to 6.30. So the trade is solid for lambs, and that's all coming on the back of tight hogget supply. So last week's kill for hoggets was down at about 12,000 head. A big drop from the week before, where you're up over 20,000, and at the same time, spring lambs haven't compensated to the same speed. And like a lot of what happens in the next few weeks will depend on what way grass growth goes, what way weather goes, and how quick lambs come in.
Darren, I leave you on this, and we probably should have said it at the start. It's the 15th of May, so the BPS application is due tonight at midnight. So if you're watching this, and you haven't submitted your application form, you shouldn't be watching it. It's fair to say, isn't it?
Well, I won't say don't watch us, but log out for now and come back in and see the repeat after. But I suppose, look at Jack, one word on that. The department are saying that look at applications are going to plan. There's over 100,000, over 120,000 applications in at the latest record. Last year there was about 122,500 eligible applications. So look, you always get a good flush in on the last day. So there should be no real problems with that. One maybe word of caution, if anyone has a transfer of entitlements, young farmer scheme, National Reserve, what the department are advising is, look, even if the application isn't fully finished, get it in, because in all of these situations, same as the BPS, Jack, there is a facility there to amend it after. But if you don't have the first one in, well, then you could run into penalties.
Okay, good job. Thanks, Darren. Adam, maybe just to come to you, in terms of the beef market, we might start off where we finished it with Darren. We finished on the markets. I'll start with you on the markets. A bit of positivity in the beef markets again this week.
Yes, Jack, another good story this week as regards beef quotes. Heifers moving up to 360, steer quotes at 355, and even reports of 370 being paid there to secure cattle. Finished cattle is very, very tight. Agents very, very active. Speaking to a couple of farmers this week, they said they've agents driving into yards that they haven't drove into for a long, long. So that's all good. And I guess the market sentiment coming from the UK is good. Kantar data released this week shows that, I suppose, beef sales and beef spend is up about 16% in the UK. And it's a similar story here. I think our mince sales are up 27% here in the last couple of weeks, which is positive. I guess we're coming from a very low base. And that retail increase still won't compensate for that steak, maybe meat loss that we're getting. There was no food service there, but definitely it's positive. Cows as well, really positive there. Cows upwards of 320, 330 for a mix of RNUs, and plain old cows back at 290. So yeah, 5 or 10 cent creeping up all the time. And you have to think back, I suppose, if we didn't have COVID, we'd definitely be way across €4 at this stage, because supply is very, very tight. The kill is down for the 4th week running. We're under 26,000. We're about 4,000 less this week last year, and we're around 200 head less than last week, we'll say this week. So yeah, it's all pointing to, I will say, increased demand there and tighter supplies, and it'll point to another couple of weeks, I'd say, rises in the sector in terms of getting finished cattle.
You're getting to my kind of next question. I mean, if you had finished cattle, or they were near finished, I mean, would you be inclined to hold for that little bit of a rise that you say might be coming, or would you be inclined to move now?
Yeah, that's the crystal ball job, Jack. You'd be always envious of dairy farmers. They just milk the cow and sell it. But we have to, I suppose, play a market, engage where it's going, engage where it's coming from, and try and play that market as much as we can, because we're obviously price takers. So I think at the moment, for the next 2 months, I think cattle are going to be very tight. Young bull kill has fallen off. We're down about 2,200 bulls this week. Again, a big fall off from what we would have killed last year. So for the next 6-8 weeks, I'd say cattle will be tight. And until grass cattle start to come out again, your big finishers there, it has almost backfired on factories, because factories dropped prices, we'll say 4 weeks ago, to 340. A lot of finishers said at that stage, do you know what? I'm not going to finish any more cattle here. They actually let out cattle to grass, some of the bigger finishers, and said we'll push these to the back end. So that has led to really short supply, and it's almost coming back to bite the factories now. But I think for the next 8 weeks, I think things are going to be tight.
Adam, Tullamore Farm. What's the situation, I suppose, as regards to sucklers and that job that's happening down there?
Yeah, so breeding's going well, Jack. He is. There's up on, we'll say, 47 cows there bred out of the 85. Heifers bred well as well. I think there was 11 or 12 heifers didn't come in. We'll say naturally they got a shot of estimate. 5 or 6 of them have come in again, and there's a couple of light heifers in that mightn't have maybe been cycling. So the bull will go out there in another week or so, and hopefully he'll catch them. Grass is the big one, and it's playing a game down there with the weather. We're really looking for rain now there at this stage, and I shouldn't be saying that coming from Cavan. If anybody around here heard me looking for rain, I'd be shocked. But no, we are looking for rain on Tullamore. Growth is good. Growth is up in the 80s, and demand is around 50. So look at it. It doesn't take Einstein to work out that we're growing more grass than we need. So that means we have to go in and take out paddocks. But Sean has been pretty cautious in taking out paddocks because with no rain forecast or with very little rain forecast, we could reach a situation in another week or 10 days where growth drops off. So we have to be careful there. But yeah, the big one is taking out those heavy ones, not going into the heavy paddocks because they're stemmy and it's really hard to get a good clean out. And we want quality grass in front of those cows. We want the cows to milk on well. Calves are starting to forward creek graze a little bit as well, which is going to help. But taking out paddocks, he's taken out a few. But just with weather, we're a little bit cautious about taking out any more.
You mentioned the stock bull there. You had problems with the stock bull before on Tullamore Farm. Like, what can you do? What can a farmer do now in terms of stock bull fertility, I suppose, at this stage in the year?
Yeah, I guess, Jack, maybe it's not now, but maybe a couple of weeks ago, maybe it's fertility test. It's very simple. A vet carried out that service at 60 or 70 euros. And that gives you a really good idea as where the bull is as regards fertility. If you're buying a bull, I'd be insisting on having them fertility tested prior to sale. And a lot of the society sales at this stage, you have to be fertility tested, or the bull has to be fertility tested to get into that sale, which is good because it takes out, I guess, the infertile bulls. But it's not really maybe the infertile bulls is the problem, it's the subfertile bulls. And research has shown that about 25% of Irish stock bulls can be subfertile at some stage in the year. So these are the bulls that really trick you, and that maybe you go out today, they're bulling a cow, that cow doesn't repeat, but and you sort of maybe you sit back and you say everything's okay, but maybe the cow that he serves tomorrow or the cow that he serves, we'll say next week, doesn't hold, and that's what's called subfertility. And it's really important to be keeping accurate records there. Like you hear these farmers maybe coming back to pedigree breeders saying, "Oh, cows aren't in calf," and maybe it's 12 months down the road, but really you need to be, for definitely a new bull going out, you need to be keeping very accurate records, record the serves, and be watching in 3 weeks' time to see are those cows coming back in heat. And I suppose not asking a young bull to do too much. Like you're talking, 15 cows probably for a young bull. They're around 16 months. Maybe an older bull can take a lot more. And a mature bull can obviously go out with a hare. But especially if you're compact calving, that you have a lot of cows coming in heat at one time, it can be very hard on a young bull. I suppose we always get these horror stories too about a lot of cows not going in calf. And what do you do then? And look, that depends, I suppose, on your system. And whether you can afford to let them go round. I'd be culling hard at that stage as regards, I guess, cows. If you have a lot of cows coming back or a bull doesn't work, use it as an opportunity to cull. That'll maybe bring some cash into the system where you're maybe selling weanlings next year or whatever, where you've lost those sales. And then maybe letting them round. I guess that's how a lot of autumn calving herds start, is where cows weren't in calf for the spring round to the autumn. And really it's a false economy. If you're not calving in the autumn already, you can fall into a cycle there where you let cows go round then 6 months all the time, and that isn't good.
I mean, you talk about the record keeping of these young bulls and watching these bulls hard. Like, I mean, jeepers, it'd nearly be always as simple to AI, like we'll say. I suppose, is it that your guys aren't around the farm as much, that they're part-time and they're going away working, etc.? Is that the big issue with AI in the suckler herd?
And that's it, Jack. I guess, sure, look, we're at 12% there, I think, in terms of AI sires in the suckler herd. We're pretty unique in Tullamore in that we're trying to do as much AI as we can. But yeah, for a lot of part-time farmers, it's very, very hard to manage AI. And you need a really good system in terms of paddocks. You need roadways. And you need to be able to get them in handy. And, if you have to be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning, getting help in the morning before you go to work, that's it can't be done almost. And maybe in the evening time then as well, there's other things to be done. So it's an awful lot handier on a lot of farms just let out the stock bull, but it's not without its perils. And really, stock bulls can get hurt, subfertile, infertile, they can get sick. There's a lot of challenges there with bulls that we have to be very aware of. It's not just about opening the gate, letting out the bull and saying goodbye to him for the summer. You need to be on top of things and as I said, keep good accurate records.
Adam, you have a piece there on the shows this week, like in terms of the pedigree shows cancelled, all kind of livestock shows cancelled. Like, I mean, tell us about the impact that'll have on I suppose rural industries, on local people, on I suppose the people involved in showing cattle.
Sure, it's massive, Jack. And look, we'll all hear about maybe Balmoral, and we'll hear about the ploughing. I think the ploughing is to the tune of 35 million, what it's going to cost in terms of lost revenue. But I suppose looking closer to home, it's those local shows, and around this area, there's an awful lot of local shows. You've Arby, you've Tullamore, and in every county you have those local county shows. And the Irish Shows Association, they reckon that's to the tune of 85 million in terms of lost revenue to local towns and villages, to farmers, to local businesses, that's going to be for the summer. So it's a massive impact on rural Ireland. I suppose it's an area that's close to my heart here. We show for the summer. We'd start off in Athlone and we'll run right through the Strokes Town. I know my wife here be saying, when am I going to cop on to myself in terms of washing cattle and grooming cattle? But that's something I've been brought up with at home, and it's almost like a drug in terms of going to those shows during the summer. It's the lads here, the young lads, get involved. They have their own calves. There's a bit of rivalry there. There's a bit of rivalry among fellow breeders. And it's just a really good, I suppose it's everything good about rural Ireland comes out of those shows. And in terms of town meeting country, you have people from towns coming asking, what breed it is. It's a shop window for breed. And in this week's paper, we spoke to a few breeders and commercial show people. William Smith in Oldcastle, Billy Gubbins in Limerick, who has been showing cattle for 41 years, would you believe. Hits, I think, is a 30 shows for the summer, travels all around Ireland, and that's just their hobby, and that's what they do, and it's a massive industry. We seen last November in Carrick-on-Shannon at the Fat Dock sale, 10,000 be given for an 8-month-old Belgian blue heifer calf. And that was with the prospects of hitting shows with her this summer, and having fun with her and winning prizes with her. And unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So there's a massive void there with pedigree breeders and commercial breeders, and it's really going to hit rural Ireland. And I hope that would say for 2021 that a lot of these shows can go back. There's some of these shows going since the early 1900s, and it'll be a real pity if they didn't come back stronger and better in 2021.
I suppose you had the best calf you ever had.
I'm not joking, you, Jack. He's up here in the field behind me. We were envisaging red rosettes around us everywhere, but no, like every breeder I talked to, this was the year, and this was the year we were going to do it. And it's a very similar thing here at home.
The year that never was. I know, but it is a pity because it does, it teaches great stockmanship skills to young people. Like, if nothing else, like, I mean, it's a huge piece in terms of, people working with animals and being able to handle animals in a safe manner. So listen, a terrible pity, but look, we'll live to fight another battle. So, folks, I'm going to leave it at that. We've had a good roundup in terms of where we are in the markets. We've had a good roundup in terms of the fields and what's happening there. We've touched off some of the issues on the sheep side and again on the suckler side in terms of the challenges. So I'll leave it at that, and we'll be in touch again next week, and I'll go and chat to Aidan Brennan about what's happening on the dairy side. Aidan, thanks for joining us. I mean, to start in a similar place to where I started with Adam and Darren, the grass side of things, there's surplus in some farms, there's impending drought in others. Give us a feel for what's happening on some of the dairy farms.
Yeah, it's very regional, Jack, and very variable, I suppose you could say. Like, there was thunderstorms last Sunday, and they delivered a lot of rain to a small number of places. So farms that got that rain are probably okay, and farms generally in the south of the country, like down Cork, Kerry, parts of Clare, that region, like they're actually got a lot of rain for the last few weeks, so they're probably okay in terms of the effect of soil moisture deficits on grass growth. But it's a different story elsewhere, particularly the Leinster and the north. The northeast, very dry, and I suppose they're probably, you'd have to say, Jack, they're probably facing into a drought at this stage. Like, unless that high pressure that's over the country moves away, you're either going to get thunderstorms, or you're not going to get rain. Like, you're not going to get widespread rain when that high pressure is there. So, really, you need a change in the weather to bring rainfall. But the situation on farms, you'd have to say, is not too bad at the moment. Growth rates are holding up fairly well. It's what's coming down the line is what farmers are worried about.
Yeah, that's what you'd see some discussion, and I see it in the pages there this week in terms of some guys going from maybe 2 kilos of feed and 2 kilos of meal to 4 kilos of meal, trying to get an extra graze and in paddocks and this kind of thing. I suppose what's your kind of rule of thumb? Like, obviously we're talking about kind of what happens in kind of 2 or 3 weeks time, so we kind of can't say for definitive. But I mean, what's your rule of thumb in terms of when to introduce bales rather than kind of meal? To try and supplement some of that kind of reduced forage maybe that's in the field. What's your thinking on that space?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'd be doing is looking to reduce your demand before putting in extra supplement. So that would be like if there's a field that you intended to close for silage, maybe the cover is a little bit too strong, but you could graze it, then I would. That'd be the first thing if you're heading in for a period of a deficit. So that will reduce your demand, and without it costing you money, you could say. The next thing then, I suppose, I would be going for the meal option, like, because it's easier. It has a less effect in terms of the cow. It'll improve production. Bale silage, like, okay, it's probably the third option, and it's the option of kind of like last resort almost, Jack, because you're putting in an inferior feed into the diet that's going to reduce production. It's not going to help in terms of your fat and protein levels anyway. So that'll be kind of the option I'd be going at. Number one, reduce your demand by increasing the area available to the cows. And then number two, then go with the meal option. And look, I think anything more than 4 or 5 kilos at that stage, if you need to feed more than that, then you need to go with bales. Like, there's no other option for there. But from what I can see, there's very few herds at that situation just yet. Like, we're not there. There's no point in panicking. The rain could come in a week's time, and then everything will be fine. So walk your farm, measure your grass, and make decisions then based on what's actually out there. And if your farm cover per livestock unit is less than 150 and your growth is a lot less than your demand, then you need to start taking action in terms of putting in extra supplement. But it's a panic slowly, as the Kiwis say.
Yeah, I hear you. Like, I mean, and look at it, but the silage, like, here we are now, kind of give or take, says you, like, look, middle of May. There's a lot of silage maybe that's gone maybe that little bit far in terms of grazing. I mean, would you be comfortable still going into covers of kind of 4.5, 5,000, like, and not grazing them down to the butt, or kind of what would you do in that situation? Like, and I know,
No.
look, it's a hard one to call, but I mean, but just kind of, give us a feel for that.
Well, there's no real right and wrong in these situations, Jack, but grazing a cover of 4,000 is way too strong. I mean, there's absolutely no way you could justify going in there and grazing that. If that was the case and it was on the milking platform, I'd be cutting it, putting it into bale or pit silage, whatever you do with your silage, and at least that area is back in the rotation. It's reducing your overall demand, because it's those fields are going to grow again. Okay, they mightn't grow as well as they would ordinarily because they've been cut and you're into a deficit, but at least they're there, at least they're growing feed again for the next round. And if needs be, then you could feed some of that back if you have to. But like, that's a decision you're going to make in 2 or 3 weeks' time if rain doesn't come. But that, I wouldn't be going into covers any more than 2,500, to be honest. Some people are pre-mowing in front of cows. Some high covers at of the around the 2,000 mark. That's okay. Like, there's a fair bit of leaf still in those boards. The problem with the pre-mowing is, I suppose, you've taken away the selection ability of the cow to pick the nice leafy stuff and leave the poor quality residuals behind. So generally speaking, if those kind of high covers, it's going to affect production. What you could do, as you alluded to there, is let the cows in, let them graze off the leafy bits, the nice bits, leave a residual behind you, of what's going to be very stemmy, bad material, and then you could top that afterwards if you wanted to. Like, but that's going to affect production again. Like, but so is the pre-mowing, or a subsequent growth rate. But so is the pre-mowing. So as I say, there's no right and wrong to it. But like, ideally, if you could manage it without putting in extra feed, they're the kind of things that you'd have to do. Like.
Yeah, okay. Very, very farm specific, as you say, and look, it depends on the rain and where it didn't fall or where it did fall. Aidan, hit us with a breeding update. Like, we're kind of week 3 for those that started early, maybe week 2 for those that kind of started the 1st of May, coming to the end of week 2. So maybe just in terms of cows that haven't been submitted yet and that maybe are calved long enough, in terms of, is there anything you should do, anything you can do at this stage?
Yeah, it's those cows that are calved over 30 days and haven't yet been served. Or haven't been seen bulling, I suppose, as well, Jack. Like, so if you're 3 weeks done, if they're not in the first 3 weeks, then you can get them handled by the vet. He'll scan them or she'll scan them, and you'll get a fair idea of what the issue is. If there's any issue, it might be just the time or there were missed heat. But taking action like that will increase your submission rates, and which is important. You can't get a high conception rate unless you have a high submission rate. Look, there's various different issues with them. Some of them will be dirty. They need a washout. More of them will need a cedar program, and more of them then might need PG. Or then the vet might just say, give them time, and they'll come in their own time. But at least you're doing something because there will be a proportion of cows there that will need to be helped along. And if you're ignoring them or doing nothing, it's just going to drag them into later and later into the breeding season before they have their first cycle. And as you know, like there's a 60% chance or less that those cows are going to hold to their first service. So at least if they get cycling early, they'll have a better chance of staying in the herd for next year. The other decision there, Jack, I suppose, is in terms of, if you have 3 weeks done, a lot of farmers will go then and use more maybe beef AI for the next 3 weeks. That makes sense if you've captured enough, and if you think you've enough dairy AI used in the first 3 weeks to generate enough replacements for your own herd. It doesn't make sense to be breeding surplus replacements if you don't need them. You can breed the beef there, and you can, a more saleable animal, I suppose you could say, for the second 3 week period of the breeding season.
It's interesting you say it, Aidan. I mean, there was one farmer on there this morning, and the vet came into 12 of his cows and just put a seeder into all of them without asking too many questions. But one of the big things was he didn't leave a kind of a program in terms of the injections needed, etc., to run alongside that program. I mean, you need a kind of a clear protocol if you get into any kind of treatment like that for that small percentage of the herd that haven't come bulling. Isn't that fair to say?
Oh yeah, definitely. But I mean, even using, we say that a seeder was used on all 12 cows without even investigating them. Like, that doesn't sound right to me either. Like, some of those cows probably didn't need a seeder. A shot of PG would have worked in those cases, and in some cases there. But you do, and the seeder programs, they're a little bit complicated. Like, there's different depending on what program you're on, and there's different vets prescribe different ways. But like, you're talking about 4 or 5 injections between the seeders and the PG and Receptol, GnRH and all those other type of ones, and they'll all go in different times, and then you fix time AI in the mix as well. I suppose one thing I would say, Jack, like, not all those cows on the seeder programs will come bulling. They won't have physical signs of heat, but AI them anyway if you're on the fixed time program, because oftentimes they're actually, they will be cycling, they will have being estrus, but they won't show physical signs of it. So give them the AI anyway, and hopefully that they hold in it. But you would want to be getting a protocol off the vets. We have them up on our own website, that you can see we've covered those kind of programs fairly well over the last few weeks. So they are there, and it's very important to get timing right.
Okay, last question. We've had a busy show. I leave you alone. Milk yield. I see some kind of farmers talking about kind of, holding milk yield kind of through peak, so that the kind of overall, I suppose, milk in the lactation is kind of better or bigger or whatever, and they're trying to maybe feed to kind of push up that peak a little bit and keep and hold on to that peak for longer. Like, I mean, what's your thoughts in terms of kind of feeding for peak and trying to hold it there at that peak for kind of maybe slightly longer? Like, I mean, what's your kind of thoughts around that whole piece around milk yield?
Yeah, well, I suppose there's 2 things, Jack, and just take it back a step. First of all, maybe, like, cows have a lactation curve, and that curve goes up, and then it flattens off, and then it comes down again. That's a natural occurrence, like, and so it's very hard to beat that. Particularly when from now on, as cows go on calf, like when the hormonal instincts will kick in, and that the cow will start protecting the calf in her, little calf in her, as opposed to producing more and more milk, which is a good thing because we need those cows to go on calf for next year. So it's difficult to beat the drop that occurs. Generally speaking, you're talking, as a rule of thumb, around 10% per month or 2.5% per week of a drop from after peak. So, peak is probably going to extend for another few weeks, and then you're going to see a drop take place in terms of the weekly collections. I'd always be a little bit cautious of people that are selling something, in like that. It is important to say that achieving high output is important. We need that in terms of getting profit, number one. But like, spending money to get something back is difficult to achieve in terms of milk yield, like, because the cost of putting in the input is often greater than the return you're going to get back in terms of yield. So beware of that. When you look at why milk would drop over and above that 10%, it's obviously a dietary issue. So are the cows getting enough energy? Are they getting enough protein? The protein one is easily solved if cows are at grass, because it's high in protein. The energy one is a different story, and that goes down to grass quality. So if you have a lot of stemmy grass, a lot of stemmy pastures, then obviously your yield drop will actually be exacerbated. So if you could focus more on getting that really high quality leafy grass in, it'll be better than any input you can give them, and it'll cost a fraction of the price. Like, it's no more than it's as cheap to feed high quality grass as it is to to feed poor quality stuff, but you get an awful lot better return on it. So that would be where I'd be putting my focus, Jack. Obviously, then you need to check for other health issues, like, they can sometimes impact on it. But generally speaking, it's the type of feed that they're going to get will be the biggest cause, I suppose, of reduction in yield. But again, I won't, as you say, like if cows and calves are going to drop a little bit faster. So I'd rather see cows dropping a little bit than rising in yield anyway in June, because that would indicate that you probably don't have too many cows and calf.
Okay, Aidan, listen, thanks. We've kept you long enough. Thanks for the update in terms of we've gone through the feed, we've gone through the grass, we've gone through, I suppose, some of the supplement type issues and a breeding update. So listen, thanks for that. We'll be in touch again soon. Right, folks, so we've had a very busy show, starting off with the suckler side of things, then into the sheep side of things, and then finishing with the dairy side of things. And again, it just shows the activity that's happening on all farms. So with that activity in mind, I think it was very important. And given the number of tragedies that we've heard about in the last week, 10 days, I said we just put another quick call into Kieran Roche from FBD, the risk manager with FBD, and just have a chat with him about some of the issues that are happening on farms. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, sadly, Jack, there has been 7 fatalities on Irish farms to date. We've had 3 child fatalities, which is very unusual and a huge concern to us, and probably linked to a lot more children being at home on the farm at the moment. We've had 3 fatalities of farmers over the age of 65, so the older profile of farmer. So 2 vulnerable groups, and it's an area that we really need to concentrate on in relation to farm safety.
I mean, the other issue that's coming up is that there's a lot of livestock. There's a lot of breeding going on farms, Kieran, and there's bulls in a lot of fields. And I suppose they might be busy now, but in a week or 2 time, maybe there mightn't be as much activity in the fields, and they'll start getting cross, etc., and that kind of thing. It's another huge area on farms to be kind of for people to be aware of.
Yeah, I think in relation to a bull, every bull is dangerous and they should be treated in that manner. We often hear people talking about, geez, he was a quiet bull that got me. But in their nature, every bull can be very, very dangerous. Always have a safe place of refuge if you're in a field with a bull or a pen, so you can get out safely. It could be a good idea to be in the field going around in a Jeep or in your tractor so you can get out there safely. And I think that's the key thing to have. Again, a bull in the field should have a nose ring and have a chain in place.
Good tips, yeah. I suppose the other piece, and again, it just struck me when I was driving in here the other day. I mean, the sun, it's super weather, so the sun, especially in the evening times, on some roads, it can be very dangerous. In terms of you practically lose vision as you're driving along. And I suppose I'm thinking of silage trailers beginning to move now with a lot of activity in the fields in terms of cutting silage. I mean, it's a big risk area, sun, and I suppose maybe more users on roads. It's fair to say.
Yeah, the Farm Safety Partnership, we met last Friday, and 2 of the big issues that came up was child safety and tractor and machinery safety around silage time, and particularly in relation to machines on the road. There's a lot more people walking, running, exercising, cycling on the roads, and if you're in a big machine coming around a narrow country road and there's someone on that road that you're not expecting to, or there's more traffic than you would normally expect in a normal year, you may not be taking due care. So make sure you slow down, drive carefully, expect to have people coming around that bad bend, because people are out on the local roads getting their little bit of exercise, whether it be a child on a bike or an elderly person, or all of us are out at the moment. So we need to remind everyone who's driving a large machine on the road at this time to take extra care. Expect to see someone coming around that corner, whether it's a child, an elderly person, someone walking, running or exercising in some fashion. They're on the road. It's not a normal year. Take extra care and drive slowly.
So listen, folks, that's a wrap for this week. We've had a super session, a super show with lots happening. And we'll be back again next week for more on the Livestock Show on Farm Tech Talk. So stay safe and safe farming.